Even with this string, would you marry me?
I just don't know.
She's on the floor, barefoot, shaking, staring at the man she left her whole country for. And he's standing there, with his arms crossed, watching her cry like he's checking the weather. Cold. Dry. Over it. The silence in that room felt louder than a scream. That's when he said the words that changed everything. Go back to Panama. I don't want anything to do with you. Not we need a break. Not let's talk later. A full stop. Full rejection. A verbal eviction from the life she uprooted everything for. And the worst part? He didn't whisper it in a moment of weakness. He didn't seem ashamed. He said it like it was traffic advice. And this is where we begin. Welcome back to Reality Sport. I'm Oliva, and if you've never been wrecked by a breakup or you think 90 Day Fiancé is just over-the-top scripted drama, this one's gonna change that. Make sure you're subscribed, because when the masks fall off like they did here, it's not just drama, it's data. And drop a comment. Would you have stayed or left if you were Jasmine? Because she didn't just get dumped, she got discarded. The man she crossed oceans and borders for had someone else the entire time. A whole other woman. A different relationship. A secret life happening parallel to hers. And she never saw it coming. She thought Matt was growing distant because of stress, maybe work. She blamed herself. Maybe she was too emotional, too insecure. The usual loop women are trained to run when a man starts pulling away. But this wasn't stress. This wasn't poor communication. This was betrayal with precision. Cold. Calculated. Clinical. And the moment it came out, everything her body knew finally made sense. Why he wouldn't look her in the eye. Why he always kept his phone flip screen down. Why intimacy felt forced lately, like he was acting through the motions. Every hug had become shorter. Every night, a little colder. But she kept pretending. Kept trying. They were engaged. She figured it was normal friction between cultures, homesickness. She gave him the benefit of every doubt. Until the benefit ran out. Because last night, while she stood shaking in their living room, the same room where they had once planned wedding photos and future babies, Matt dropped the truth in one blow. A wound so honest and final, it carved the air clean. I've been seeing someone else. The floor didn't fall beneath her. It stayed still. That was the worst part. Nothing exploded. Nothing cracked. Reality didn't fall apart. It stayed sickeningly, disgustingly normal while she collapsed under it, clutching her chest, trying to press her ribs together because the pain was coming from a place no CPR could reach. She didn't scream. Not yet. She begged, not with dramatic wails, with cracked sentences, between shallow breaths. Why did you let me believe? Why did you bring me here? Why didn't you stop me back in Panama? He didn't answer. He just looked at her, like a customer service rep, trying to move a line along. He had made up his mind. She wasn't just being broken up with. She was being erased. And what Jasmine did next? Nobody saw coming. Not her fans. Not even production. She didn't walk into this blind. She walked in believing. Jasmine left behind her kids, a teaching job she loved, and the only community that had ever known her as anything other than dramatic. The noise of Panama, the comfort of her sisters, even the scent of her old apartment, gone, in one brutal decision to chase love in a place that never felt like hers. She picked Matt. And for months, she told herself that was a good choice. She cooked for him, even when she was jet-lagged. She tried to be softer, less fiery. She second-guessed every emotional wave that hit her. Because she wanted this to work. Because she thought love would be enough. Because she believed if she gave it absolutely everything, He would meet her halfway, but there's nothing more humiliating than realizing you were the only one building the house. Matt started disappearing before he physically left. He'd respond slower, if at all. His phone started living face down on every surface. And he always had the same defense ready to go. Work's been crazy. Or can we not do this tonight? Translation. Stop bringing this up. Stop being needy. Stop making me the problem. When she asked why he never held her the way he used to, his answer wasn't confusion. It was annoyance. You're being dramatic. You think too much. This again? He made her believe her instincts were flaws. He trained her to distrust her own read of the room. Slowly, she stopped bringing up the silences. The red flags became background noise. She adjusted her standards to survive, not to connect. That's what gaslighting does. It reprograms not just how you see someone else, but how you see yourself. And the real punch? All of it played out on television, but not as a tragedy. Not as heartbreak. As comedy. As chaos. As crazy Latina girlfriend strikes again. The edit didn't show her confusion. It showed her volume. It framed her desperation like a tantrum. When she cried for clarity, the soundtrack made her into a storm. Because it's easier for viewers to root for the calm guy than the woman sobbing on the bathroom floor. It's easier when emotional betrayal is cropped, trimmed, and dipped in upbeat music. No one stopped to ask why Jasmine was spiraling. They were too entertained by how hard she hit the ground. And Matt? He played steady. Supportive. The mature one. He fed lines to the camera about trying to communicate better. Meanwhile, he was already dividing that same energy between two relationships. Jasmine didn't see it, but the signs were there. They always are. You just don't call it cheating when you still think you're the one being loved. But while Jasmine was fighting for her future, producers were already choosing sides. It was 2:03 a.m. Jasmine was wide awake, heart racing for no reason her brain could explain. Matt was asleep next to her, calm as ever, like nothing in the world could touch him. But something told her to look. Not snoop, not spy, just look. His phone lit up from the nightstand with a quiet vibration. And what she saw wasn't some scandalous picture or secret app. It was something worse. Why didn't you reply? A photo of a woman wrapped in a blanket, cozy, soft-lit, smiling as if the camera had captured a moment meant only for him. A row of red heart emojis. Not one, not two, a string of them. Not lust, not explicit, but claimed. Intimacy without shame. It was the kind of text message you don't send unless you think you're the girlfriend. The tone didn't say I miss you when you're done filming. It said, where are you, boyfriend? And Jasmine froze. Not from jealousy, not from rage, from recognition. This wasn't new. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't someone shooting a shot. This was deep. Familiar. She could feel it. That ache in your chest when you know you've just crossed the line from confused to betrayed. She quietly opened the thread. More messages. Nothing physical. But emotionally? Direct hits. I miss your face. I hate when you disappear. Did you eat today? That was Jasmine's question, and someone else had been asking it this whole time. She stared at the screen, hoping she was wrong, hoping this was miscommunication, hoping again that she was being too sensitive. But the more she scrolled, the harder it became to lie to herself. This woman wasn't some workplace distraction. She wasn't a fan. And she definitely wasn't a friend. When she woke Matt up, her voice didn't even rise above a whisper. There was no fire left. Who is she? Matt blinked, disoriented, played confused, tried to grab the phone. What are you talking about? You said you were tired. You said there was no one else. But who is she? He looked at the screen, paused, then exhaled like he was the one being attacked. She's just a friend. She's going through something. You're overreacting. That's when Jasmine knew she'd heard that sentence before. Not just from him, but from every man who's ever taught a woman to doubt her own eyes. She didn't scream. She didn't throw the phone. She just stared back at him and said what she couldn't unsay. Do not lie to me. Still, he tried. Still, he gaslighted. You're being paranoid. You always jump to the worst. But the timestamps told their own story. The frequency of messages, the tone, the lack of guilt. Jasmine's mind started racing backward, stringing days into connections she hadn't seen until now. The gym sessions that lasted 3 hours. The unanswered calls at night. The subtle scent of unfamiliar cologne when he came home. Her memory became a crime scene, and every little moment was now evidence. This woman wasn't some fling. And Jasmine's world started to unravel piece by piece. The way production reacted wasn't normal. When Jasmine showed signs of breaking down, they didn't act surprised. They were already outside the hotel room. They were already mic'd. Cameras weren't off. They were lurking, waiting, not helping, not comforting, just ready. That's when it hit her. They knew. Not everything, maybe, but enough. Enough to know Matt wasn't who they painted him to be. Enough to know this storyline wasn't headed for a fairy tale ending. And instead of intervening to protect her, they were prepping to catch the explosion. Clip it, package it, air it. She could see it written across their faces. This was gold. So, when she tried to pull away to breathe, one of the handlers gently redirected her back into the set apartment. Maybe take a walk, clear your head, and we'll continue on camera? What they meant was go cool off, get your makeup together, so your breakdown lands better on screen. Jasmine smiled. Not the happy kind. The kind that scared them. The kind that says, you're not getting what you think you're getting. They wanted the loud version of her. The one fan pages call unhinged. The one they could play dramatic music under. The one they could cut with Matt's face looking calm and tragically misunderstood. But that show was over. She saw the script. And she wasn't playing the villain anymore. She stood there, hair a mess, throat scarred from crying, phone still shaking in her hand, and looked at the producer, dead in the eye. You knew something. Maybe not all of it. But something. The producer stumbled. We didn't. Don't lie. You steered me away from checking his phone before. You told me not to ruin things. You told me wait. Now the silence worked in her favor. It wasn't awkward. It was power shifting. They didn't want the truth. They wanted the reaction. They didn't care if she was broken, as long as it tested well with audiences. So she did the only thing they didn't expect. Nothing. No yelling, no panic, no camera-smashing chaos. Instead, she stared straight into the lens and said, if you won't let the truth be shown, I walk. I disappear. I take myself and every ounce of ratings I bring, and I leave. That threat wasn't scripted. That wasn't desperation. That was a woman who realized she had been edited, gaslit, and framed for the entertainment of people who never gave a damn whether she ended up alone in a foreign country or not. TLC banked on chaos. But what they got was control. And now Jasmine had it all. The evidence. The footage. The rage. All she needed now was time. And this time, Jasmine wasn't waiting to be saved. She picked up the match and lit the entire script on fire. She wasn't guessing anymore. Jasmine had hard proof, and she was done letting anyone treat her meltdown like it wasn't justified. The phone in her hand wasn't Matt's regular device, the one he sanitized for cast visits and confessionals. This was the second one, the one he didn't think she'd ever find. She only discovered it because something felt off while helping him pack. A charger tucked into the side pocket of his gym bag, even though his main phone was already plugged next to his bed. Instinct led her hand straight to the bottom of that bag. There it was, matte black. No case, no password. Rookie mistake. Inside? Everything he worked so hard to smile past was waiting in plain sight. Texts going back months. Screenshots. Photos. Drafts of messages never sent because he got interrupted. And confirmations. Lots of them. Hotel bookings made while Jasmine was filming all-day interviews. Food delivery receipts to addresses that weren't his. Even a missed Uber ride that showed a drop-off point she had never been to. These weren't mistakes. These were plans. And not cheap ones. He had taken the other woman to places Jasmine had only dreamed of going with him. Romantic spots downtown. Boutique stays. The kind of trips he told Jasmine they couldn't afford. Jasmine had once spent 3 days trying to convince Matt to go see a movie with her. Now here he was, dropping hundreds on wine tastings and couples massages with someone else. But what pushed her breath right out of her chest was the date stamps. He had booked a 2-night stay with the girlfriend on the exact weekend he told Jasmine he was going to clear his head and couldn't film because production needed to reshuffle timelines. She remembered being told she wasn't allowed to shoot that weekend anyway because there was no budget for B-roll. That had sounded weird then. Now it was a red flag waving inches from her face. Jasmine didn't scream. She didn't knock over furniture. She sat down, opened her notes app, and began documenting everything. Time, date, location, room number, confirmation code, screenshots. She wrote it all out like a case file. She wasn't unraveling. She was collecting ammunition. The next morning, she demanded a direct meeting. Not with an assistant. Not with the field producer. She wanted the showrunner. The real decision maker. They tried to stall. "Let us fix this," they said. "You'll feel better if we all just talk." No. Jasmine knew what that meant. Another hotel room. Another apology without a mic. Another deflection disguised as concern. This was bigger than relationship drama. This was a scripted collapse that they helped shape and now desperately wanted to bury. So she gave them no choice. If I don't talk to someone who signs checks, I'm going straight live on Instagram in 30 minutes. And I'll show every single screenshot. You think fans won't tune in? They folded fast. The showrunner showed up hours later, trying to stay calm, but already sweating. Jasmine had been unpredictable in the past, but now she was calculated. No yelling, no pacing, just a laptop open on a coffee table and a quiet demand, "Let me walk you through what you missed," or chose to ignore. She started with the phone, showed the texts, the timestamps, the voice notes from the other woman. She read receipts aloud like she was delivering a TED Talk. Emails confirming late-night check-ins. Uber logs showing back-and-forth trips from her apartment to another location while Jasmine was supposedly being filmed. The showrunner's face turned pale at one detail. The same production driver who once took Jasmine to an interview location had also dropped Matt off at one of these hotels. They tried to deny it, said maybe it was coincidence. Jasmine played the hotel lobby cam footage Matt's girlfriend had sent her. It wasn't just Matt. It was Matt smirking into the camera, holding takeout and flowers. The showrunner tried to change the subject. "This is between you and Matt. There's no need to blow up the network." Jasmine didn't flinch. "You knew something. Not everything. But you knew enough to stop painting me like I was unstable." Then she slid the pages across the table. Printed screenshots. Calendar comparisons between shooting logs and hotel confirmations. Notes Matt made in his phone about when to shift energy so Jasmine wouldn't notice the coldness. It was all there. Labeled. Tabbed. No conspiracy, no hearsay. Just facts. "Your story isn't broken," she said calmly. "It's exposed. You can keep hiding behind edits. Or you can film the truth." The room stayed silent. Jasmine leaned forward. "You built your season around a narrative that doesn't hold up. The man you painted as stable?" He walked out of the apartment while I cried on the floor and told his side chick I never mattered. I have it in voice notes. Screenshots. You want the ratings? Film that. She stood up. No mic, no makeup, no angle playing in her favor. And still, somehow, she owned the room. For the first time, production didn't fight her to stay on script. They were looking at a woman they tried to edit into a meltdown and suddenly realized she was their entire season. This storm wasn't just emotional. It was data-backed, and she had every receipt. Matt showed up for his solo interview with the same expression he always wore. Calm, collected, maybe even a little smug. Button-down shirt ironed, hair styled like nothing had cracked. He still thought he had the upper hand. Still thought charm would carry him across the hot coals the way it always had. But this time, the coals were lit by Jasmine, and the whole floor had changed. The producers weren't throwing him softballs. They weren't guiding him toward safe answers with sympathetic nods. This wasn't a recovery interview. It was a forensic exam. So, Matt, one producer asked, flipping through notes, on March 17th, you told Jasmine filming was canceled for the day. Do you remember where you went? Matt blinked. I think I had a migraine that day. Strange. There was no mention of a migraine in the texts. But there was a receipt from a boutique hotel 40 minutes across town, complete with a timestamp and an order for 2 glasses of wine. The next question sharpened. And on April 2nd, why did you call for a rideshare from a location that's not on our shooting schedule? He swallowed. I don't know. I probably visited a friend. I needed space. He was cracking. His voice got slower. His hand started rubbing his thigh under the table. You could feel it, the image management sliding off him like broken glass trying to stick to sweat. Jasmine wasn't in the actual room, but she was watching nearby. Quiet. Blank expression. Arms crossed. She didn't want revenge. She wanted accountability. Not for the cameras, for herself. Matt leaned on the one excuse every guy in his position seems to think is original. It wasn't like that. I didn't intend to hurt anyone. Things were just complicated. Cue the silence. Producers didn't blink. Complicated doesn't explain months of hotel bookings under fake names. Complicated doesn't look like 2 phones and a girlfriend being coached to stay quiet until after the season aired. Complicated isn't planning an exit strategy while filming promises. He tried blaming the pressure. Said things got distorted. But distortion didn't write his texts. Didn't book the rooms. Didn't send Jasmine home crying because he said she was too much, while responding to another woman saying, I miss you, baby. Then came the moment everything cracked. When they asked, was Jasmine aware you were continuing a relationship with someone else during filming? His pause was too long. Way too long. He glanced at the camera, then at the floor, then at his hands. No, he said finally. She didn't know. There it was. Confirmation. Not from rage, not from hearsay, from his own mouth. That was the second producers realized this wasn't a miscommunication. This was a full-blown deceit that had been carefully, calmly maintained for months, while Jasmine was painted as the liability. And now, it was her turn. Her interview wasn't fiery. It wasn't even sad. It was still, cold, focused. Jasmine sat in front of the crew like she had nothing left to hide and nothing left to give away. No nerves, no hesitation. Her breathing steady. Her eyes locked on the camera like it was the only eye in the world that hadn't lied to her. The first question was quiet. When did you realize this wasn't just distance? It was betrayal. Her voice didn't shake. When the messages stopped sounding like accidents and started sounding like commitment, they asked how she felt when she saw the texts. She said, I felt like my heart got kicked out of my body. But what hurt worse was the rollout. It was so casual. No apology. No horror on his face. He looked like he'd already moved on from me. Like I was interrupting something scheduled. They asked if she felt stupid. She smiled. No. He should be embarrassed. I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. I gave real love to someone who didn't earn it. And she didn't stop there. She laid out the days she cried herself to sleep, while Matt told production she was overreacting. She described the nights she held back confrontation to avoid being cut from the show as unstable. She told the truth about what it costs your dignity to protect someone else's public image while they privately destroy you. She didn't blink when she said, "I might have looked dramatic on camera. That's fine, but I was never deceptive. I didn't create a version of reality that sold better." That's what they did. Her interview ran longer than planned. Nobody interrupted. Nobody prompted. Nobody needed to. This was the show. Anything before had just been edited tension. This was raw pressure finally releasing itself into air. And what stunned the crew wasn't the receipts Jasmine brought in. It was the peace in her voice. She wasn't shaking. She was steady. It was the tone of a woman who had already survived the worst day of her life and now had nothing left to fear from anyone. It silenced the room. Even the producers, who once flinched every time Jasmine got emotional, now sat quietly. Not because they were managing the scene, but because they had finally seen her. The most compelling moment of the entire season wasn't some blow-up or crying confessional. It was Jasmine, still, present, and above it all. And when Jasmine finally spoke, the entire room went quiet, even the producers. Jasmine was back at the hotel when her phone buzzed. She wasn't expecting anything, wasn't scrolling, wasn't waiting for closure. She was just sitting there, blank, dry-eyed for once. But the name that popped up in her Instagram message requests didn't need an introduction. It was her, the woman from the texts, the blurry selfies at night, the heart emojis on Matt's second phone, the one Jasmine wasn't supposed to know about. Not yet. Not ever. The message was short, but lethal. "Hey, I think we need to talk." Jasmine didn't reply right away. She stared at the profile photo, a face now permanently burned into her memory, and opened it. The woman had posted recently a quote about honesty, a sunny mirror selfie with lyrics in the caption. Nothing about Matt, no sign of scandal. But Jasmine knew better by now. She finally opened the full message thread. And there it was. Screenshot. Voice note. Another screenshot. A photo of Matt's hand on her waist. Recognizable even in the crop. Texts where Matt told her, "In no uncertain terms, Jasmine's not a factor. Don't worry about her. That's just for filming." And it didn't stop there. Matt had told her he wasn't really in love, that Jasmine was part of the storyline, that the romance had become too messy and producers wanted to wrap it clean. He even laughed in a voice note saying, "She's useful. Let them shoot what they need. I'll take care of it after." Useful. Wrapped clean. Jasmine read it twice. 3 times. Not a tear in her eyes. No cold sweat. At this point, it wasn't shock. It was confirmation. The ache she'd been carrying for weeks wasn't irrational. It was earned. She didn't scream or call anyone. She didn't throw her phone. She saved every single file. Downloaded the voice notes. She labeled the screenshots with dates. Added them to the growing folder she'd been building since Matt's poker face cracked. This wasn't just love gone wrong. This was production-assisted manipulation. A story built to collapse at her expense. A man who looked her in the eye during interviews and said, "Trust is everything," while holding another woman 6 blocks away. What made it worse? The other woman didn't even know she was involved in the lie. Her messages weren't gloating. They were confused. Hurt. She hadn't been told about Jasmine. She had bought the fiction too. That grounded Jasmine. Clicked something into place. This other woman wasn't her enemy. She was in the same position, different trailer, different script, same deception. So Jasmine took a deep breath and replied, "What exactly did he say about me?" Minutes later, a flood of messages came in. Matt told her Jasmine was an ex who was contractually obligated to appear, that she was part of a deal, that they were faking it for the cameras and it was basically over. Every sentence soaked in casual cruelty. Not defensive, not embarrassed. Relaxed. Planned. There were receipts Matt never thought would leave that other inbox. Jasmine had them all now. Dated. Tracked. Corroborated. She recognized her wardrobe in the background of some mirrored photos he'd taken while FaceTiming another woman. Messages sent while she was in the next room. And suddenly, this whole thing shifted. This wasn't a bad breakup. It wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. Intentional. Patterned. You don't collect lies like that without working to protect them. You don't juggle two relationships across continents and cameras unless you've made peace with lying as a lifestyle. Matt never saw Jasmine as a partner. He saw her as a character. But she wasn't playing anymore. This time, the girl who was always painted as too emotional looked at the worst betrayal of her life and didn't fall apart. She built the case. Because now it wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. And Jasmine had evidence. The knock on Matt's door didn't come from a producer. It came directly from Jasmine. No camera crew prepping shots. No handlers framing the scene in advance. She told them, if we're doing this, we're doing it raw. No rehearsal, no second takes. The crew knew better than to argue. They followed her lead like she owned the show now. And maybe, in that moment, she did. When Matt walked into the interview room, he moved like someone afraid of all the wrong things. He still thought this would be an attempt at closure. That Jasmine wanted clarity or one last cry for dignity. What he didn't know was that she didn't need closure. She had already packed that into folders, zip files, and cloud backups. He sat down with a practiced sigh. Defensive, but trying to sound gentle. He looked around at the setup. The camera's already rolling. The energy different now. Then he turned to her. You look tired, he offered, like it was compassion. His go-to-soft voice. Still playing the good guy. Still performing. Jasmine didn't blink. You lied. And now, we're recording the truth. His shoulder twitched. The first crack. He looked toward one of the producers for support, but no one moved. The same crew who used to jump in to smooth tension now stood completely still. Jasmine had already earned their silence. I could have screamed in the apartment, she continued. I could have thrown your bags. But instead, I waited. I gave you a chance to come clean. You didn't. Matt opened his mouth, then closed it. No apology, just that same rehearsed tone. Things got complicated. I didn't mean to hurt you. But this time, Jasmine wasn't giving him space to spin. Complicated isn't sleeping with someone else while I cried myself to sleep 10 feet away. Complicated isn't booking hotels during filming and lying to both of us. That's not complicated, Matt. That's cowardly. Every brutal fact was said in the same calm, razor-sharp tone. There was nothing performative about it. No raised voice, no table slap, no meltdown. And that made her twice as terrifying. Matt shifted, realizing that the man who once appeared so composed was unraveling under the pressure of a woman who finally understood just how much power she'd given him and just took it all back. I'm sorry if it got messy, he mumbled. She tilted her head. No, you're sorry you lost control of it. Silence. Then, slowly, Jasmine pulled out her phone. You told her you weren't with me, that this was all fake, that I was part of the brand. Would you like to hear it back? Matt's eyes darted around. He didn't agree. He didn't stop her either. Because he knew. He knew. She didn't press play. She didn't need to. It was enough that he saw she had it, that it existed. That every lie, every denial, every gaslight wasn't floating in her memory alone. It was recorded, backed up, archived, and shareable. Then, she stood up. You don't owe me an apology. You owe it to all the people you tricked into thinking you were safe. He looked up at her, quieter now, still scrambling internally to salvage the image. But it was over. The producers didn't cut. They didn't interfere. They were watching a franchise moment collapse in real time. And this time, they didn't want to stop the fire. They wanted to catch it. So Jasmine did what no one expected. She walked out. No door slam. No dramatic pause. No camera hug or final confessional. She left 18 seconds before they tried to call cut. Because she wasn't playing a role anymore. She was done auditioning for empathy. Matt sat there, shrinking with every breath, surrounded by silent cameras and the weight of suddenly being exactly who he was behind closed doors. Matt had no idea. She already had the truth. And half the crew was rooting for her. By the time Jasmine walked out of that interview room, the edit team was already in mild chaos. What was supposed to be a dramatic but controllable plotline had taken on a life of its own. The footage didn't fit the character arc they'd been building for Jasmine all season long. The one where she's too fiery, too emotional, too much. This version of her? Calm. Direct. Dangerous, but in total control. And worse, for them it was real. The footage couldn't lie. Every second showed a woman who had been deceived but didn't collapse, who had faced the man who unraveled her life and didn't scream, who held receipts in her hand and stared down production like they owed her airtime, not compassion. The narrative they'd spent months crafting no longer made sense. Jasmine wasn't the problem anymore. She was the proof. Producers huddled in editing rooms over take after take, trying to find a way to soften Matt's confession. At first, they tried reducing his voice notes to vague sound bites. Maybe they could stack his apologies. Maybe they could lean on old footage where Jasmine cried too loud, hoping viewers would blur the lines again. But then, the storm moved off screen. Clips leaked. Screenshots surfaced. Subtle bookmarks in the timeline fans had been dissecting since the season aired started to snap into place. Those scenes where Jasmine overreacted? Reddit threads began matching her anger with the moments Matt was emotionally elsewhere. The quiet comments in early episodes? Viewers timestamped them, dissecting the background. A phone flipped face down, a shift in tone, a glance that didn't feel present. The internet started building the edit they weren't shown. It happened faster than production could spin it. The petition for justice for Jasmine started as a meme. By week's end, it was trending. You could watch it happen, episode by episode. They stopped adding sinister music when she cried. Stopped cutting to Matt looking exhausted and noble. Zooms that once made her outbursts feel manic were rescored completely. They left her moments longer, gave space to her silence. On screen, she finally looked like what she always was, a woman trying to make sense of being emotionally abandoned in real time. For the first time in the franchise's recent memory, an edit got rewritten from the outside in. Fans weren't being spoon-fed anymore. They had Jasmine's receipts, they had her timeline, and they had their own disgust with how many times they'd fallen for the nice guy persona, while crucifying the woman who dared to panic in the face of betrayal. What Matt didn't understand, what the show didn't predict, is that viewers aren't blind. They're human. And when given the truth, they change sides fast and permanently. Jasmine kept filming. But not because they begged. Not because they bribed. Because now, she controlled the story. She wasn't waiting to be redeemed. She was showing up to reclaim her face from every camera that twisted her before. She interviewed like a witness, not a victim. When asked if she regretted coming to America for Matt, she shrugged. I regret falling for his version of love. But I had to come here to find the truth. Power doesn't always come in a climax. Sometimes it shows up in the aftermath. When the crew starts listening more carefully. When producers start asking, "Are you okay?" And meaning it, not because they care more, but because they fear the receipts. Nobody wanted to be the next person on Jasmine's camera roll. She didn't threaten lawsuits. She didn't walk off set. She didn't burn down the house. But something much bigger happened. Quiet defiance. She refused to act like she needed to be rescued or be given closure. She brought her own. And by doing that, she gave women on the show, finally, a path to follow that didn't require being either the villain or the victim. Matt faded fast once this shift happened. Comments on the network's official pages flipped overnight. Where they once read "Jasmine is too much," they now said, "Matt's manipulation was slow and cruel." The same scenes aired, but the meaning had changed. The truth always finds its way under the lens, no matter how hard producers try to bend light. That's what terrified them. Because it wasn't just one moment. It was momentum. A reset. One woman, blamed for everything, choosing not to explain herself anymore, but to show what she had lived through, what the cameras missed, what everyone had ignored. Not even TLC could control it anymore. The truth was bigger than the edit. The door didn't slam shut. It clicked. Quietly. Jasmine stepped out of the studio lot and into air that actually felt real, cool, still, unfiltered. No lights following her. No producers checking their notes. No cameras trailing her walk like some tragic exit shot. She wasn't broken. She was clear. There was no cinematic redemption arc. No swelling music. No long monologue into the void. Just air in her lungs and the sting of realization, finally turning into peace. Jasmine didn't need to look back to know Matt wouldn't chase her. He'd barely fought to keep her when she was standing right in front of him. What she needed now was distance. 2 hours later, she sat alone in her hotel room. No makeup, no lights, no storyline hanging over her. She looked at the window for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and did something she hadn't done in weeks. She called Panama. Her sister answered first, shocked to hear from her but quick to listen. Jasmine's voice didn't crack. She didn't need to relive every betrayal. She only needed to say a single sentence before the emotion caught up to her. "I think I forgot who I was." That call didn't end with sobs or a dramatic family reunion. It ended with her sister saying, "Come home when you're ready, not when you're defeated." It was the first thing Jasmine had heard that didn't sound like an expectation or a performance. Just space. Permission to rebuild. Later that night, she called her kids. Earlier, she hadn't been able to. Not like this. Every time she tried before, she felt ashamed, like she had abandoned them to chase something that turned out to be a lie. But this time, she didn't feel weak. She felt honest. She didn't sugarcoat what happened. She didn't share the details. But she told them what mattered. "Mama's stronger now. And she never stopped thinking about you." And that was enough. She sat with her thoughts after that. Not scrolling, not spiraling. Just thinking. Thinking about how many times she'd said sorry to Matt for crying, when all along her tears were a warning sign. Thinking about how many scenes TLC had shaped into stories that made her look unstable instead of misunderstood. Thinking about how reality TV loves characters that break, just not the ones who figure out they were never the problem. She thought about the silence too, the kind that creeps in when you're walking through emotional landmines and trying not to trigger the man next to you. The kind producers used to call tension, but was really her body keeping the peace no one thanked her for. And then she thought about her comeback. Small, but solid. Private, but irreversible. She didn't write a Notes app essay. She didn't do an Instagram live to clear her name. She didn't owe anyone that. When you've been publicly humiliated, your first instinct is to prove you're not the caricature they painted. Jasmine let that go. She knew the people who mattered had seen the truth. She knew the receipts didn't lie. The power she had now wasn't in a headline. It was in the way she carried herself through the storm and never let go of the evidence. It's a strange kind of healing that comes after you stop begging people to understand you and instead start understanding your own worth again. That's where Jasmine stood now. She left the hotel the next morning with her scarf tied, suitcase rolling behind her, and no producers in sight. No airport drama. No tearful last words. No dramatic vows. Just a woman finally walking without the weight of someone else's script on her shoulders. Whatever they edited, whatever they aired, whatever they clipped short or soundtracked to make her look irrational, none of it could erase the truth she carried now. She entered the show as someone in love. She left it as someone awake. And awake is always harder to manage, harder to control, harder to contain in easy narratives. There's no comeback arc, no redemption edit that can compete with clarity. Especially the kind that doesn't need applause. So, if you're watching this and thinking Jasmine's story is over, it's not. The cameras may have stopped filming, but the impact of what she exposed is still burning through every layer of the franchise. And maybe, just maybe, producers are starting to realize that the truth is wild, loud, inconvenient, and definitely not something they can scale back in post. Because you can manipulate sound bites. You can't rewrite receipts. And Jasmine? She kept every one of them. If you thought Jasmine dropped bombs in this episode, wait until you see who the producers tried to silence next.